We're going to bring on Connor Earegood here. We had some connection issues with him, but we're excited to talk some Spartans with him because he has great coverage with the Detroit News of the Spartans. And Connor, I'm just going to say this. I'm a Hoosiers grad and fan, so that I don't let that impact anything. I tried to talk about him as much as I could, but my intrepid producer Rex usually stop me from talking about them since they're not in Michigan. But I really think that there's a chance that Michigan State can be the Indiana of this year. I like the way the schedule stacks up for them, and I think they've got an improved roster. They did well in the portal. I think these units have improved. They've got a full year under Smith now, but I've been following your reading, your writing, as well as a lot of the other pundits, and I'm curious what you think about this team after following them the way you do, because it's obviously a lot more than I do. And welcome to the show. Also, I forgot this with the last segment. What do you think about ice cream pie? I don't know what to do with that. That's the National Day. Have you had an ice cream pie? That's a lot of questions. Answer them in whatever order you'd like.
Are we talking like the Hershey pies from Burger King? Because that's a classic.
Oh.
That's like a good 1 a.m. Friday night type dessert. I'm vehemently for those.
Interesting. That I didn't think of those. Because that's the National Day, and obviously the National Day is sometimes influenced by whatever lobbies there are here where they have a restaurant or sponsor it or whatever. But I don't know where this ice cream pie thing came from, but I want an ice cream pie. I just don't know what it is. But that may be the best description so far. The first guest brought up French silk pie, which is very similar to those Hershey pies.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't go wrong with it. As far as Michigan State goes, it's going to be an interesting season for sure. Like in terms of intrigue for a roster and a schedule, and kind of everything that's building up to this season, I feel like Michigan State's one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the Big Ten that's not a Penn State or an Ohio State that you're expecting to be in the CFP. Oregon, you could throw in that. Like there's a lot of scrappiness, a lot of underdogness out of this team. I wrote last week they could finish with 2 wins, they could finish with 6 or 7 in Big Ten play. There's a lot of even matchups, I would say, at least on paper. Right? It's we haven't seen any of these teams take the field. Things will be more clear when it comes to October, September. When games actually are played. So we'll have a better sense by then. But as far as things stack up now, it seems like this is going to be a very interesting season for Michigan State. You have a returning starting quarterback in Aiden Childs, who was impressive at times last season, and then also, had some moments where people kind of put their heads in their lap and figured, what's going on here. Made some boneheaded plays, but he's back. He's improved. Has his favorite quarterback coach in John Boyer working with him now. He was a year apart from him because he stayed over at Oregon State for a year while Smith came to East Lansing. But there's a reunion there. There's a receiver core that everyone, whether it's defense or offense, has been quick to point out as an X factor. Nick Marsh obviously leading that, but transfer from Middle Tennessee State, Namari Kelly. Rodney Bullard is in the mix. Krishan McCray from Kent State. A lot of talented guys. They could go 7 deep with guys that they say can play. On the defensive side of the ball, you have a pretty experienced linebacker group. Jordan Hall obviously leading it, but Wayne Matthews is in there. Brady Pretzlaff played a little bit and then redshirted last year. You have Samaj Bridgman, who was at Michigan and went to Michigan State, that was really solid and apparently was the picks leader in fall camp. So watch out for his hands. And then the defensive line, they have some studs there too, some guys that have thousands of collegiate snaps collectively in that group. So at least up the middle, it's going to be hard to run on this Michigan State team. But then you look at the corners, and they have a lot of sort of replacement guys, guys that they picked up from the portal. They had 4 guys transfer in. Apparently, they've adjusted pretty well. Heard good things about Josh Eaton, heard good things about Malcolm Bell. But it's also a largely unproven group that I think is probably the weakness of this team, and that's without having seen them play. So, again, it's just a very interesting team. There's a lot of position battles. There's a lot of parity between position groups and players and all sorts of stuff like that. So this is going to be one of those that when you watch through the season week to week is going to be very interesting.
It just seems like they have some depth in there now. You did a good job kind of highlighting each group. The whole Childs thing is interesting to me. I didn't know about the quarterback coach. Are you surprised that he stayed behind at Oregon State? Because obviously they had a lot of people moving over, including that young quarterback that showed a lot of promise. I'm surprised that he stayed there. Was that in hopes of being elevated with some of the other folks moving, or what do you think played into that?
I'm not entirely sure. So both times that he, or the one time actually he's spoken, it was in the spring. I don't even think he spoke in the fall camp yet. Was during basketball season, so I wasn't there. But I think that may have been part of it, or at least staying on because of comfort, or I don't know if it's kids are in school type of thing. I'm not totally sure, so still learning the answer to that. But if you look at his track record, he's coached some great quarterbacks in the past that maybe were a little bit overlooked in Jake Luton, or a guy who had all the talent in the world and was the number one quarterback in his class, if I'm remembering correctly, in DJ Ukulele. Both of them had great years under him at Oregon State. And so, either side of the recruiting spectrum, he's proven an ability to develop talent. I feel like some guys are quarterback whisperers for the top guys. Some guys are really good at guys with a chip on their shoulder that are those underdogs. John Boyer can do either, it seems like, and Aiden Childs really responds to him. That's been the impression I've gotten from everyone I've talked to about that. And it could have been also Brian Lindgren, offensive coordinator, obviously was the quarterback's coach last year too. I think some of that might have been him thinking he could probably do the job and then be OC and kind of handle so many different phases. And, when you're in the Big Ten and you're running a whole offense and there's so many issues to deal with and fires to put out, sometimes the midnight oil gets burned a little bit. So I think some of it may be a work-life balance thing as well.
Giles seems like a strange combination between the two things that you're talking about. He's got clearly a lot of talent, but I could also see him being a guy with a bit of a chip on his shoulder after last year. A lot of the projections that I'm reading, and there's a lot of new quarterbacks, that's common now for college football, that there's a lot of turnover. You got the transfer portal, you got the draft, you've got natural attrition of being a senior and graduating. But I've seen Childs in the back half of the quarterback rankings a lot, and that's surprising to me because between his talent and then reuniting with his quarterback coach and having a lot of weapons around him, but more, obviously you got Marsh, but then all those receivers you listed, he's going to have a tight end that's probably at the high end, top end, tight end. I'm surprised to see him so low, and I'm wondering if that's going to motivate him, because when I watched him last year, yeah, he had some interception issues, and I'm sure that's one of the things people were seeing. But if you actually watch the games, he had a lot of good moments. It's just that he needed to contain himself a little bit better and go through the progressions, because it's almost like he had too much talent at times. Do I run now? What do I do here? Whereas if you just go to the progressions and then run as kind of a last option, hopefully they'll have him in the pocket a little bit more this season. But I feel like between the offensive line improvements and the amount of weapons, I think he's going to be one to watch out for this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on the important part, the offensive line improvements. I mean, there were times when the ball would be snapped last year and he's on the run already. Like, there were times he didn't have a whole lot of time to do anything. So having an improved offensive line is going to be huge. Matt Gulpin's a big part of that. Stanton Ramil, another year he's going to be in the mix. There's a bunch of guys who could fit in at guard, and I think there's probably going to be some shuffling there. And there's always injuries and things like that, but this is a group that's 10 deep, or so Michigan State's coaching staff is saying, of guys that they're pretty confident that they could play. And so that's going to be huge for Aiden to have that up front. I think, there is that chip on his shoulder, but I also think he's the kind of guy who maybe looks more at the results of last season than what people are saying, if that makes sense. Like, I think he sees the 15 turnovers last year. I think he sees the record 3-6 in the Big Ten, not making a bowl game, being so close. I think that's what motivates him more than, what pundits are saying and quarterback rankings and things like that. Like, he understands there's going to be the outside noise, and that's pretty apparent. And I think he's learned to shoulder that quite well, at least, as much as you can in sort of a 1-year crash course of being a starting quarterback. But I think he's very motivated by how last season went. And I think he's brought that up really since they lost to Rutgers in that last game. Like, immediately brought that up in his post-game presser. And I thought that was pretty mature. You don't usually see that from a quarterback, to instantly focus on, all right, what are we going to do to fix this? So I was actually very impressed by that. And I think that's something that's going for him is that motivation. and he obviously has some guys that he trusts on that offense. He was a big voice for recruitment. He was one of those guys DMing and calling people that joined the team that transferred in, and saying he watched their film and things like that, getting guys motivated. There's a lot of trust in that offense, and even on the defensive side of the ball, that he's their quarterback.
I have to imagine that guys that would appeal to guys. His ability, he can obviously get it downfield pretty quickly and run an offense fairly well, I think, once he kind of gets his feet underneath him. So it's going to be interesting to see him with the new weapons. And I think the schedule is a little bit more favorable this year than it was last year. There was that grueling stretch that I feel like if a couple things had broken a different way, Boston College, that'll be another key game this year because they play them again. And then if they can kind of set themselves up by winning the 3 non-conference games, once they get into the conference, if they can get a little momentum, we could be looking up and seeing them at 6-0 or so headed into the tougher part of their schedule. So it should be interesting. I appreciate you coming on and joining the show. We'll look to have you on again as new things develop here in the season. But tell people where they can follow you and your writing here.
Yeah, just DetroitNews.com/sports. So all the Michigan State tab will be right there, and at Connor Earegood on Twitter. So I tend to be more vocal on there than Blue Sky, but old habits die hard when it comes to posting quotes and stories and things like that. So still on the old site.
It's hard to transition. There's so many sites out there now. It's hard, and then everybody's still calling that one Twitter, and that happens a lot because X is harder to say because it doesn't really delineate as much. So, but be sure to follow Connor on all those platforms. He does a great job writing about the Spartans, and I think they could be a resurgent team this year. So we appreciate you joining the show, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon here.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on.
All right. Thanks, Connor. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks to Connor Earegood of the Detroit News.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by
Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Encore Business Group, and Rydan Investments.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.
Stay informed and stay vigilant.